everyone. I'm just going to walk around and see everyone's faces for a minute first. We know this pillar. Yeah. So this is something my mother used to say to me when I was a kid, maybe around like 5 years old or something. And I think the first time she said it was when I was maybe like head buried in a book. And I used to read all the time, like upside down and in bed and every possible way. And I think for most parents, like they would think that reading is like a good hobby, like you'd be happy that your kid is reading. For my mother, it was a little bit different. She thought that I was living someone else's story, like the highs and lows of the character, rather than myself. And I think like that has stayed with me today. So every time I catch myself doom scrolling or binging Netflix, I'm like, oh, mom's in my head. I have to stop and kind of make my own stories. So I wanted to start by this, and then kind of we'll touch upon this very many times through the session. But remember it, because you'll have to come back to it. So if this works, yeah. So we're going to start with a bit of an icebreaker. So I thought, like, because I told you a bit about my childhood, maybe we'll try to remember a bit of yours. On the next 3 slides, I have 2 options, and each of them has like one of these little icons. So depending on what you want to vote for, you either clap or you can give a little shout out, whatever you want, any sort of vocal sound, I guess. Yeah, is that clear? Yeah. So family holidays or school trips. Wow, it's overwhelmingly family holidays, nice. Eat outside food, like I guess going to a restaurant or not your home cooked food, or mom or anyone else. And the last, physical play or digital play. So nice. I feel like we're all the same. I checked this with my Sambo yesterday, and he was different for all of them. And but I guess that's why we're together. Anyways. Yeah. So with, sorry. So with all of these things that we've had, like all these memories that we've gathered along the way, I want us to, like, for you to not just today listen to me, but also try to kind of reimagine and reflect for yourself about all of these things we've brought with us. Like what we are today is a result of everything that has happened behind us. So let's start with a bit of a reflection. Okay, so what would we reflect on? Unfortunately, today I think our environments are designed kind of for us to consume, over-consume often, rather than to preserve, protect, and this means that then the things that actually hold meaning to us get pushed in a corner. And what I mean is that, like, again, going back to what my mom said, right? Like following or living through someone else's stories. So that could be following a trend or following someone else's truth or going after a certain job because that's the trendiest job or that's the place that you're supposed to be at. So those are all things that is put on by someone else. It's not necessarily what you might feel. This is deeply personal and different to what each of us think. But I think we can start with trying to discuss that a little bit, if this works. Okay. So find a neighbor. Hopefully you can pair up. If you don't have one, find 3. And think about all the moments where you live through others and where you live through yourself. And you can think about like how you consume media, what your hobbies are, what kind of work you do. These are just some nudges. For you, it might look like something else. But yeah, do you need any examples or does this sound clear? Okay, so for me, for example, like it could be, it has been in my life that I've chosen to work quite closely with founders, or that I like being out in nature and being like doing those kind of things. And I know that those are the things that give my life meaning or actually push me forward in trying to find myself. And it's not necessarily because school told us that we should have this kind of a job, or like, I mean, it's the same with the book example of that my mother said, right? Like reading someone else's story, consuming through their story means that you are living through yourself. It's not always all bad. Like, of course, we need to do that. It's exhausting if we're constantly just producing our own, but it's a start somewhere. So, yeah. So you can take a couple of minutes. I'll let you talk in silence while I just hang out here. Sorry, was that really fast? You know, time works differently when you're just listening, but I hope you had some time to talk. Does anyone want to share like what you talked about? Maybe one or two people? Yeah.
So, what is your name? Sorry? Borgini. So, Borgini talked about dancing as living through others, and necessarily he joins this group of people and he is one amongst others. And we both resonate with also our careers is somewhere when we live through others as well, and definitely our creative pursuits. He's a writer, and I do speaking and podcasting as a way to live through yourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for sharing. Anyone on this side of the room? Yeah.
I often, when I obsess about certain show on Netflix or whatever, I have like a musical ear, so I end up sounding like the main character. So it depends on what I watch. I watched once Only Murders in the Building, and I walked around sounded like Selena Gomez with a New York accent that's a bit mumbly. And then everyone was telling me like, who is this? Who are you? So every time I switch and obsess about different show. Now I'm watching a show about two old ladies. So apparently at home I talk a lot about like aging and being 70. So yeah, I have that.
Yeah. Oh, love it. Cool. So I think like generally, like, you know, all the things that you said with like living through others, the more we start doing that, unfortunately we reach this point of a bit of like cultural erosion, like eroding ourselves, but then it's part of a whole cultural erosion, and that is like this monoculture where we all start looking the same and sounding the same, and you know, our apartments are the same and these offices look the same, and you know, it's just more of that. I have a few stats here that I just want to just give this in context. So every year about 9 languages go extinct or like cease to be spoken. That's 1 every 40 days. That's kind of crazy. We wear our clothes only like 7 to 10 times before we actually throw them away. I think this one is an American statistic, if it shows up. Yeah. So adults in America are spending like 30% less time socializing face-to-face. I think this is probably quite similar to Europe and Sweden as well. The number is even higher for teenagers. So it's just not a great like projection. And the last, today, 3 crops contribute to about 50% of our calories. That's like rice, wheat, and corn. And over time, we have eaten about 6,000 plant species. So now we're mostly down to these 3, or rather 9. 9 make up 75%. So, yeah. But for us to actually go into this place of like, if we want to heal ourselves from everything that's happening, I think of it like this is something that always comes back to me, that what is good for myself, like what is good for me personally, is usually also good for the planet. Like we're so interconnected, we are one, and whether that is speaking of like, eat a varied diet, that means growing a varied crop, which is good for the soil and it's good for our gut. You know, so there are so many things that kind of fit very closely together of us just like being able to heal our minds or our bodies, and we heal the environment and the society that we live in. The other thing that I think of when I think of revival is also reinterpretation. Like how do we retell these stories that we have, repurpose them and tell them in a different, in a new way that is culturally significant even today. And for that to happen again, like go back to our past, but also connect to the community past and see there are definitely things that are super interlinked. Oh my God. Oh. So how do we actually do this to heal and to reinterpret? For me, it's a couple of things. So one is trying to be like a culturist, to not just, like again, going back to not just consuming, but actually being out there and giving myself the time to dream or to inspire and to be inspired, like taking in a diverse amount of like inspirations or like influences. Like if you think about maybe in your discussions that you had, like maybe it's now that we go down to that our influences are very few, Maybe it's just a lot of like Instagram algorithm influencing us, or is it just ChatGPT telling us what we should do, and then we think, oh, but ChatGPT is really good at role playing and giving us diverse experiences. Sure, yes, but it's still also one format or one media, right? So how do we actually just go out there and build this culture or be part of this culture that we want to be part of? The other thing I think as creatives, which we're very good at doing, is being a connector. In order to come up with a good idea, we're connecting ideas, right? We do that all the time. It's very natural for us. But the other thing that's also really good is connecting people. I mean, CreativeMornings is really good at this. I know there's at least a couple of community builders, Jenny, Jocelyn, in this crowd who do that, like connecting people and building community. But like, what if we also actually went back, looked at our past and connected that to the future? You know, like reach across time, reach across space, and figure out what connections we can make. For me, these are like 5 questions that have helped me or that I come back to. We won't have time to go through this today, but you can take a picture if you want. And it's basically, I'll read them out. So what stories make me feel deeply? It's the stories that, you know, connect to your emotion, the stories that you actually feel like, yeah, this is making me feel something strongly, whether it's good or bad. Even a negative or a emotion can be a good driver in some cases, right? So anything that makes you really feel in your belly. What stories should have the opportunity to be retold? Maybe not all stories need to do that, but maybe there's some, let's say, a tradition or something that you feel like, oh, this can have a chance to be retold in a way that makes sense or that can actually benefit today, in today's context. The other thing is, what stories give me my unique perspective. So if each of you are telling your stories, there's a reason why you are telling it. There's a reason why I'm telling my story. And what is it that actually makes me have this uniqueness, or be able to be there and say that, yeah, this is what I do and this is why I do it, like having that purpose. And then the last 2, thinking about our impact. I think as creatives, we should be thinking about our impact more. Not just personally, but also, again, like planetary and like a community impact, and thinking what that could happen, like what potential could it have to solve? Because again, as we talked, one solves the other potentially. Yeah. I want to share 3 of my projects of how these stories for me have come true. I also have a bunch of like samples and things here that you can look at later. So the first one for me is, I had quite a creative childhood, I guess as many of you here. This is me as a sunflower. And it was, again, my mom dressing us up as weird stuff all the time. But yeah, it was fun. And I realized quite quickly on that this is true for me when I was 3, but it's also true for me today. That the time that I can actually silence the world is when I'm with pen, paper, paint, crayons, whatever. And actually connect to, again, this emotion. It's a very personal revival of how do I get back my energy or make space for new energy. So it is drawing and, yeah, just, and even when I'm drawing today, you can look at my sketchbooks, you will realize they're not always very good sketches, but they're basically me trying to channel my inner child. I actually try very strongly to tell my hand and my mind, like, oh my God, just draw like how I did as a child, because I want to connect back to who I was when I was 5, and I want that that emotional release to happen on that paper. So that's yeah, that has been one. The other is a project that I started a few years ago and continue to do it today. It's a food project. I have 3 products here that you can try. But I use it as a way to connect to my mother, to my grandmother, and basically all these amazing women who came before me, who are so good in the kitchen. And I think as women, or at least I think I was probably one of the first few generations in India to be told, to be raised to have a career, let's say. And that meant for me that, oh, you know, I'm doing a pretty good job of like following my father and my grandfather and being this like, oh, strong career lady. But then I'm losing all this wisdom that my mother and my grandmother and all of them have. And I didn't know how to cook. I came to Sweden. I kind of missed the flavors and the foods from my childhood, and I started trying to teach myself and build it into something that in a way that I'm like, oh, this needs to be shared. Not just because there's an opportunity, but because I want to be able to connect to who I am and revive that part of like the cultural revival as well as personal. And then the last one is, again, my family was very much, or this is quite like what an average evening with my family looks like, very much intergenerational. Everyone in many ways doing their own thing, but also coming together for conversation and connection and really just, being together, giving each other the privilege of our presence, a gift really. And for me that meant like, I've realized that as I spoke to people here in Sweden, that this kind of childhood or this family gathering that I have was kind of special because not everyone had the opportunity to have that back home. So I thought like, how do I share this? How can I give this to others as well and recreate that through these storytelling sessions that I co-host in Stockholm with a friend. Yeah. So time for you. Same thing. You have some ideas this was personal to me, but maybe you can talk with each other about what emotions, stories, or any conversations, what things from your past do you want to reach out to and kind of repurpose and retell today in a new way that actually helps you, helps the planet, or helps whoever around you. Yeah. So I'll give you again a couple of minutes, grab someone next to you, and have a chat. I know it's very nice to continue, but I want to be mindful of the time, so you can continue after we end, because we're soon going to wrap up. Is there anyone who wants to share again? Like, I would love to hear someone else other than Matteo and Beata. Yeah.
The story that I told was based on a childhood of living very globally and internationally. And when I was younger, like mid-teens, I used to work a lot in the Swedish consulate, like serving people food and stuff. My parents were diplomats. And I remember one time where I was serving food and my mother took me to the side and she said, "Do you know who you almost spilled yogurt on?" And I have no idea. It was some old white man. And she went, "It was the Finnish president." But that taught me very early on just to speak and act with people as you and not like as they are a stakeholder or a boss. Like you can go up and have a conversation with someone without feeling the pressure of adapting yourself to that person or their status or their job. So that's a childhood thing I'm channeling. Like I can sit on the floor and talk to a FTSE 100 CEO just as well as standing shaking hands.
Yeah. Nice. That's a nice piece of advice also. I like it. Anyone else? Maybe one more on this side. Maria, you want to go?
Yes, I grew up in the 70s and people were divorcing. I'm from Finland. They were divorcing like crazy. So I don't know how many families I went through, but there was always love. So it was kind of, probably you haven't gone to a curator today in Sweden and you have to go to a shrink because you're going to go crazy. But I want to share that you can have many families and many people in your life and create these nice moments that you have with your family there. That's what this planet actually needs, I think, more connection, like that close connection.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I agree. Cool. So I just want to wrap up by like kind of leaving you with one more question to think of. Like this is not for us to discuss here, but for you to just take with you. Is it possible for us to really revive ourselves or go through any revival if we don't fully know ourselves or our past? So just some food for thought. For me, I think the answer still lies in my mother's wisdom for us to go out and create our own stories. Yeah. And with that, I will say thank you.